Hey guys, back to LSE. If you haven't watched the first part, there's going to be an icon you can click on to watch the first part, so please do. This is the second part review on the chainsaw, which works with the MAKITA batteries. It's a 12-inch TAIRDA is the name of it, and so far I'm using only the first chain and not even, oopsie, upside down, not the other two chains yet. So you can see there are still the other two chains in it, which I have not touched into because this one is still sharp. As long as you're just cutting real wood, you're good. So I'm gonna do a couple demonstration here quickly, but what I have to say about it is making sure what I stated in the first video. You might want to adjust your oil a little bit to be a little bit more liquidy than tacky, so that it actually goes through that little opening inside here for the chainsaw. But the chainsaw is still very sharp, so here you can see. So it cuts very good, no problem. I have a couple other ones here, thinner and thicker. And what I found out is, as long as you're using a battery like 5 amp and more, your runtime is pretty long. So if you haven't subscribed and liked this video, please do so. That's what pretty much funds the channel. And I still owe you guys a review on the chainsaw, how I built it. I did a short about it quickly. But essentially it's a couple of 2x4s and two 2x3s, actually 3 2x4s and two 2x3s, all for under 50 bucks. But as you can see, it still cuts very good. So just make sure that you wear your PPE, meaning glasses, shoes, gloves if you need to. If you don't have a sawhorse, I would highly suggest you have some gloves on. But that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day, and please like and subscribe. Thank you. Alright guys, take one. So I wanted to do a little bit more than just the short review, because I want to give you a couple details about it as well. So that you guys can see it. I waited for some sunlight to come out. So one of the things we did find out is, so up here is where you do your fill cap for the oil, and here's that little glass so that you know how full it is. I'm doing 10 milliliter to 12 milliliter and leave some air in it. There's a bleeder valve here on top. I'm sure you can see it, and sometimes a little bit oil backfeeding there. But the chainsaw itself works very, very good. It has one or two little design flaws. So let's take it apart for a second here and show you what I mean by that. So when I unscrew this all the way and take this out, this is one of the could be improved situations. So the thing is, I'm not sure if you can see it, but in there is a hex screw. Let me get it out and clean it up a little bit. So there's a hex screw, and the hex screw itself is only sliding in here. So quite often it has some play. As you can see, there's play. So and that play can be of an issue when you try to get it to bind back. It pops out when you don't pay attention, and so you have to pretty much pre-seat it and then use your normal hand twist and tie it in. When that doesn't work, you can use a screwdriver to poke it in. But that is the only other thing I found out. So now let me take the tension off here a little bit, take the piece off. I didn't clean it, as you can see, and this is on purpose. So what you can see is when I take everything off, it's not in a very bad shape. Let me just do a little bit of a quick cleaning, nothing major. Just so you can see what I was talking about earlier. So one of the things you have to do every now and then is when you sorry for the wind noise, I might have to do a voiceover now. You can see that there are little oiler holes, and these oiler holes tend to get clogged up with sawdust. And so here's your oiler, and so that little hole sits right there on top, as you can see, and it slides back and forth depending on how far you have to extend the bar out. And so make sure that that gets cleaned whenever you change your battery, or every 2 batteries, depending on what you're actually sewing. Primarily because you have the other hazard. So clean it out every time you change your battery is the best. Every 2 times. So 2 batteries, and then cleaning out works too, depending on what type of a wood you actually do. The brush they gave you with is not really that great. Use an old toothbrush or one of these nylon brushes and get it cleaned. So I did a little rough cleaning just so that you guys can see. So down here is your endless screw, and this little ball or pin is actually what feeds into your bar, and this is how your bar is actually being moved, and then tighten the chain. Make sure the chain goes always in the right direction. So one of the good things, they marked it on here on both sides, so you know in which way the tooth is going. So if you don't know, by most chainsaws your tooth is going with the sharp edge. I'm hoping you can see it clearly. So there's the sharp edge, there's your depth gauge. So your depth gauge goes first, then your cutting edge. That's the easiest way you can pretty much remember it, and then you just put it back on and put it into the groove, and then you pretty much put it back and install it. The installation sometimes takes a little bit, but it's with every chainsaw, it's not everything super straightforward. But I wanted to guys see this so that you have an understanding that even it's an electric one, it's like a regular chainsaw still. So it needs maintenance. So don't just use it and forget it, because even I cut a lot of dry wood, because you have oil which is being applied here, it still gets saturated with that oil. So all your debris is going to get saturated with the oil, meaning it's starting to stick within the housing. So make sure that you clean that. Always disconnect the battery when you're working on it, because you want to make sure that you don't hurt yourself, because it's too easy that you grab here with the thumb in the back and you just accidentally push the safety to the side and then you pull the trigger. So always disconnect the battery, just as a big safety, and make sure that you wear your proper PPE when you're actually doing work. Sometimes I don't wear hearing protection when it's just 1 or 2 little cut links, but anything which is more longer going on, just wear them. Put your safety glasses on. If you're wearing regular glasses which are big enough to cover your eyes, you can get away with it, but I highly recommend that you're really wearing some safety glasses, and make sure that when you work that your hands always stay behind this point to that side, because there are too many videos out there on TikTok, YouTube, Snapchat, Red Note, where you can see that especially untrained people that they accidentally have it running and they reach to the front. That is very, very dangerous. So make sure that you always keep your hand somewhere here. That's why that safety handle is in place for a reason. So when you run this chainsaw, like you saw me earlier running with one hand first and holding pretty much the limb on with the other hand, it's not ideal. I highly recommend that you're using something in that sawhorse where you just put in between the spades, so to speak, your wood and just cut it in there. Don't have your hands there somewhere nearby, because a chainsaw, no matter how small it is or how big, it can kick back. As you have seen, it was rolling one piece of wood towards me, and because I'm experienced, I know how to handle it. But for somebody who's unexperienced, that could have been already a finger or 2 fingers or deep cut into the hand by not knowing, and then just grabbing into the wrong area, which means in front of the chainsaw. Always keep your hands behind the chainsaw. Don't have a second person holding it. Let the sawhorse do the work. What you can do if you have some small wood which backfires on you, what you can do is you can just run a strap quickly around the sawhorse and just loop it over like a bungee cord, and that holds it down and more steady in place, and then you don't hurt yourself. So there are different ways you can do it when you do it by yourself, so that you can avoid injury. Always treat this like a full-blown $800,000, $900,000 plus chainsaw. Even they are tiny and small, they have a lot of power. It stops when it gets jammed. That's the good thing. The bad thing is when you're cutting something up in a tree and you get stuck, it jammed, and so then you're stuck. So now you have to make sure you have something else in order to cut it back free again. So always make sure that you have your proper gear, and when you do something on a limb, let me grab one here, and let's say this is a limb the size of like an average arm, and you have that as a branch. Make sure that you first cut from underneath like a finger wide in. Once you do that, you save yourself a lot of hassle. Don't overcut, just like a finger wide. What this is your brake leverage. When you cut from the top and it actually starts, you cutting down and it starts to bow. You see where that gap now becomes handy? So now it starts to bow down into that little gap, opening up the gap where you actually cut, and then falls off with a flush cut. Sometimes you didn't line it up and you have a little bit of an offset cut, but you have a clean cut. Where if you don't do from underneath, like a finger or so on this small one, so I would say always like 20% up to, less is better. But this avoids you from splinter or the wood actually hanging and then ripping on you while you are in the tree or leaning against the tree. Always make sure that you have a little bit from underneath cut away, and then go from above right there and cut through, so that this one can fall off without hurting you and separates cleanly from the tree trunk, which you most likely are either attached to, have a ladder leans against. If you have a ladder, don't just lean it against it. Make sure that you use something to strap it in place so that the ladder can't go off. It can maybe slip and slide, but doesn't fall off the tree. And make sure that safety is always number one. If you don't feel safe with it, call a professional for this. More and more professionals you will see, especially when they're doing tree trunk work high in the trees, they're gonna go over to small electrics now, more and more, because they are a lot smaller, as you can see, a lot more powerful, and can get the job done, because they have one other big benefit which the gas-driven one doesn't have. If you release, it stops the blade. Where if you have a gas-driven one, there is always a chance that something in the clutch is not working proper and the clutch fails, and then the chainsaw is still running while you have already everything off the trigger. So that's why a lot of people will fall and move over to more and more the electric, for the small ones, not for the big ones, but for the small ones. because they seem to be a lot more of a safety feature included with, and safer in handling, and less maintenance overall. As you can see, I just did a little cleaning. The chain, I already said it in the first video, you can buy it in bulk. The specs are standard, so it's nothing out of the ordinary. But yeah, please be careful on this. I have more reviews coming up about machines which are made in China, which are copies or similar to copies of the original brand. So this says on one side, or said on one side at a certain degree, that it is a Makita chainsaw, but it's not. It's totally different from what Makita is. It's not a standard with the Makita quality, but for somebody who's just doing it around the house, around the yard, around the farm, and just run it for a couple of days out of a year, really, and I abused it already. I used it pretty much for the last 3 months now, at least twice a week. I did cutting firewood, I did a bigger pile, burned a lot when it was cold down here. I used it pretty much throughout the year. Now we are in June. This is 1st of June. So I used it for over 6 months now, and it works flawless, very less maintenance. Again, it's just the oiler and making sure that your bar is cleaned. Make sure that you have something like a pick or something to clean the bar out, because whatever dirt gets in here, it rides around and it will grind down your bar. So getting a bar replacement is most likely as expensive as the whole chainsaw, so make sure that you get the most life out of it. Again, they're under $100. I'll post a link down below in Amazon. It's an affiliate link where you can buy it. They also have it for I think it's a DeWalt and Milwaukee connection at the end for a battery pack to fit in. But again, it's a very nice tool. It's very handy, especially when you just have to do a couple limbs here and there, or you do a little bit of firewood. It goes through the firewood just fine. As wetter the wood is, as easier it is to cut, of course. As drier the wood is, as harder it is, but it's cutting fine, as we still have seen. This is still the first chain. I have not resharpened it either. So again, highly surprised by the quality of it, and highly surprised how long it's lasting. I didn't expect it at first to last that long. And again, thank you for watching. There are more videos coming. I bought in between a Makita circular saw. I bought a grinder, which is an off-brand for Makita, but it works like the Makita one. Very highly surprised with it as well. Thanks again for watching. Please like and subscribe, and have a good one.